Hi everyone, I'm super excited and so happy to be here with this great guests around me and also a surrounding team that is supporting us. I'm Marie from DripByDrip, an organization that dedicated itself to the water issues in the fashion industry. We are working on this issue since 5 years, but we see just very little changes. Therefore, we set up these roundtables to invite guests with very diverse perspectives to hear and learn from them and to be inspired for our next step as an NGO. We are here to analyze and highlight the issues of water overconsumption and water pollution because of the fashion industry. Definitely we won't find solutions for all problems, but it's a start here. The roundtable discussion will be 3 parts, and the first part is today, by the way. Happy World Women's Day, and that's why we named it Water is Feminist. So we're gonna discuss the connection between water, women and their wardrobe. The next episodes will focus on the water, and then the third episode will give an outlook and we will find our mission that we will follow. Now I would love to introduce our guests, and I would like to start with Kalpona Akter. At the age of 12, you started to work in a textile factory. You say that it was your former employer's biggest mistake to fire you. Can you explain that?
Yes, thank you so much for having me here today. I consider it a great mistake has been done by my factory owners who fired me. I would be not the troublemaker Kalpona Akter, what I am today, if they would be not fired me. So I started working in the factory as age of 12, and of course it wasn't fun. And I had to go to factory because my father was the primary earner in the family, and he got ill. So my mom went to the factory, and she couldn't continue because we have a baby sister at home. So then she had to quit, and she had to send her 12 years daughter and later 10 years son to go to the factory, and 2 of us was breadwinner in the family for 7, and little amount of medical for my dad. And why I said that it was my factory owner mistake, because years later I just came to know that I'm not just a human, I also called a worker. I'm protected by the law, and I'm depriving constantly because I didn't know my rights and I couldn't ask them. And soon I started asking them right after knowing the law and rights, and I started organizing in my shop floor. They got my voice critical, and they fired me, not from that particular factory, also blacklisted throughout the industry. So my life became that difficult that I didn't get job anywhere. But the union, they found a spark on me, and they hired me. And I think since then, I never stopped. I'm kicking the wall and fixing the things.
Thank you for your story.
Sure.
Next to me is Claudia Schwarz. You're professor for fashion management in Munich, and with a focus on sustainable supply chain management. How did you came to do this, and what made you passionate about it?
I started to work as a designer, and I studied fashion design at first, and then I got into the industry with this whole illusion that I want to make beautiful things and design beautiful clothing, showing it on catwalks, fashion shows of the world, till I've actually worked in the industry, and I started to notice, well, there are a hell of a lot of things going wrong. So fast fashion exploded. We produced in developing countries with bad conditions and also environmental problems. So basically I worked quite a while in the industry, and till I decided no longer anymore, then I had for a very short time I had a own fashion label myself and we produced in Germany actually, in fact, just to avoid any social problematic impacts and also to work more environmental friendly. Also that didn't work so well for me till I found myself in education, and I basically see now the chance that education is key for knowledge, education is key for change. That's why I am now at the Media Design University in Munich, because I want to give back to my students what I did basically wrong when I worked in the industry. I want to teach them so they can make changes later on in life and make the right decisions in their profession, and hopefully also kind of be troublemakers. I wish for them to be troublemakers too. That's my goal.
Great, thank you. So then our next special guest here is Aditi Rajagopal. And in 2021, you produced the documentary India, How Our Clothes Cause Water Pollution for the Deutsche Welle. Why did you choose this topic, and what shocked you most there?
First of all, thank you for inviting me to this. Well, I chose this topic because I primarily report on climate change and the environmental impact of many things, from energy to different industries. And I started looking into water pollution, and I think there's a lot to be said about water pollution, but primarily the impact of the textile industry was like, this is such a big, important topic that is actually still underreported. There has been a lot, I feel in Bangladesh, we can talk about this more later, is that there has been a lot of reports on sweatshops and the conditions of factory workers. But still, like, there's not enough nuance in the reporting. And so I thought, like, I'm in quite a unique position. I work in Germany, and our audience often is like European or American, who are, of course, the biggest consumers of textile and the fashion industry. And so I thought, like, it would be a really good idea to go to India, where I'm from, and show the impact that's directly caused by Western consumerism on people and the planet there. And I think that link, of course, we know it, but I feel like that, like, we have to keep repeating it in the media. That's the link that I wanted to strengthen. And what I found when I was there was, yes, of course, there's like issues of labor, especially with women, but also we're still not talking enough about the environmental impact and the impact on the people that live in the environment. So I spent a lot of time with farmers and farming communities around the river that we'll talk about more later. You really see, like, it's not just that they have to, I don't know, like, live with litter or waste, or like live drinking dirty water, but it's like impacted their whole lives and the lives of all the future generations to come. And unless we speak about it and unless something's done, that's really bad. It's not even a cycle, it's like a really bad linear path to go down. And that resulted in this 12-minute documentary that I made.
Thank you. Our next guest is Lara Severa. Thank you that you're here. You're a seamstress, a trained seamstress and designer with a sustainable focus, and you do have your own knitwear label called Lara Severa. And in the past you have worked for well-known brands like McCain or Jeezy. And I would like to know from you, what does sustainability in knitwear design mean to you?
Well, also thank you for having me. I feel very blessed to be with these women here today. I think when I started as a seamstress in the beginning, I said it earlier, like I think you don't really learn a lot living in Germany, coming from Germany, about this problem in fashion. So for me, later on, when I went into knitwear, I noticed later on that knitting is one of the most sustainable ways of making clothing. So I felt more attracted to it. And now, after working for corporate companies and noticing a lot of these problems, now that I start my own brand, I'm trying to, the best of my abilities, figure out how to build a sustainable brand. But I think because I didn't learn a lot about it, it's a lot of challenges that I have to figure out. So I think, or I hope after this, maybe I'll be more a troublemaker. So.
Thank you so much. So that's our round of guests today. And now, before we go more into personal questions and your stories and experience that you can share, I would like to share some facts to build common ground about the topic we are on today. So a little bit about water. We do have 2.5% of fresh water in the whole world. Like the whole blue planet is just a very little piece of that is fresh water that we can use, and only 0.3% of this again is accessible for humans. So this little water brings us to the situation actually that there are already 700 million people. That's like around about the population of the entire EU. That these people suffer already from water scarcity today in 43 countries. And by 2030, there are gonna be around 50% of the whole population of the world that will live in water-stressed areas. So that are some facts about the water. And the fashion industry is using, it's estimated that they're using 93 billion cubic meters of water every year. That is enough for 5 million people to survive. And the fashion industry produces 20% of the global wastewater, as the industry is putting like 80% of their water untreated back into rivers and the nature. The fashion industry has a big impact on that too. And the water that is contaminated is a big problem for women, especially in the global south, because they need to, or that is overconsumed, and so it's a water scarce area, and they need to walk long distance for drawing water from wells, and so that leaves little time for education, and also a lack of flowing and clean water reduces school time, at least with the beginning of the period of girls. At the same time, the lack of sanitary facilities is a big risk for an attack, that when they have to go to the fields to pee, that they get attacked. Additionally, women also have to use the toilet more often than men. And when they are drinking the water and they are, for example, pregnant or they are breastfeeding, it's a high risk for the unborn child or for the baby. So that's a connection between the water and the fashion and the women. And now it's the best part. I'm looking forward to our conversation, where when we heard now these facts that are quite shocking and not a good outlook water-wise for the next years. I think most of us bought or wearing fashion products that are not perfectly produced, and in terms of sustainability, for example. And yeah, I would just like to lead over into the conversation with the question, do we not care or simply not knowing enough why we're doing it?
Yeah, I mean, consumer country perspectives, I can jump on, okay. Yeah, consumer country perspectives, it is both, okay. The first, there is not enough information. You know, information get buried behind of this glossy report that being produced by these companies. The money they spent for, to make, apologize for the word I'm going to use, fool the consumers that how good they are. They can totally use this money to, waste control in the production country. But they don't want it to do that. They just wanted to take care of their part of the business, that how much money they can make out of making fool these consumers. So the consumers, I think mostly they don't get the information. What is the reality behind of this level? That how this being produced or what being involved on this. So this is one. And second, even if they know, sometimes the consumers think that my one voice it not make any difference. Yes. Even I would know, that will not make a difference. What I can do? because it's a billion-dollar oat company and they have everything to tackle my voice. And I think that's the dilemma, okay? The consumers need to think that their voice really matters, even that is one. So next time when they go to the, any of these stores or buying anything, they should start asking that I wanted to know more about this worker, this product. I wanted to know more about the story behind of that level. How did you produce that? Where? In what condition? Put like 5W on that. I think that will be starting ringing bell at the boss's office. When you wanted to know that how much water has been used to making one white t-shirt. Tell me more about jeans. Tell me more about the sweatshirt. It is like 250-gallon water used for a sweatshirt. Somewhere I have seen. So I think that's going to blow the mind of the consumers, and at the same time, when they caution to that brands. So more cautioning, I think, will make difference rather thinking that my voice would be not making difference. Yeah. I wanted to live here and definitely will contribute more, sure.
Yeah, I actually hear that a lot. Even talking to my students, that they say, yeah, but what can we do? We can do nothing. And I'm like, of course we can do something. I mean, and today we have social media. I mean, there must be a way to do it, because I remember in the 80s, dating back, I was kind of little, but still, there was Greenpeace. It was very big, and there was a Shell oil platform, which they just wanted to sink, into the ocean because it was leaking. And basically, there was this huge call for boycotting the gas stations, and there was no internet, there was no social media. I mean, people just didn't get gas at the Shell stations, and suddenly they made so much loss that they didn't do it. So something like that, I think we need more like of this collective activism. And but I have to say, there's also a little bit of lack of knowledge, because you said the companies, they have good marketing strategies.
Totally.
And they're kind of claiming all these things, making people believe, oh, if I buy this piece of clothing, I'm an activist. Yes. Because I'm kind of a good person, right? Yeah. The good person, and it makes me feel better because I buy with them. Yeah. And it's a total illusion, like the whole fashion business is kind of like an illusion. But, and there's no transparency, no true transparency. This is actually what is really missing. And, people and consumers, they don't make the effort to go on websites and do research and go to all the NGOs and read again. It's kind of like this little effort they have to do as an extra, which is bothering.
Yeah, but to that, I mean, I totally agree. I think it is the responsibility of consumers to push brands to be better, to ask the questions, definitely. But I also think that it's not like up to the consumer to do all of it, because it's, I mean, half the time I'm tired, I don't have the time to do so much research, and it cannot be, and it's not just fashion, right? You have to, like, this question comes up with so many industries when you're buying, I don't know, whatever else, like a plastic bottle or whatever. It's just like, now it's become a matter of convenience. And because we have so little time in our lives to actually do this kind of research, and I feel like often the onus falls on the consumer. And while it's important to be aware, it's also really important for us to have strong policies in place, and that's where your work comes into play, where we need like strong unions, we need good regulation that isn't restricted to a place, that isn't restricted to a country, but as you said, like, transcends these borders and is actually something that will change the whole system. Because, I want to obviously buy like sustainable clothes, but as you said, like the greenwashing of it, like I don't have the time to do all the research to actually understand, like, okay, I'm using organic cotton.
You never know what to believe.
You don't know what you believe, but even if it's something that's believable, there's like so many layers to this. Like with organic cotton, it's good that you're using organic cotton, but it could come from a place where you're like ruining the water table, So as a consumer, I don't have the power to look into each of those things, and so we live in this, like the system we live in is structured in such a way that it goes against you if you actually want to do a good thing. So it's like top down and bottom up.
This whole global system is also very it's kind of like very intransparent, and it's kind of like difficult to kind of gather the facts and understand it.
Yeah,
I mean, they learn it all in school, and the end consumer knows everything from the news, but it's kind of like getting it in a big context, in a big picture, it's kind of like a problem. But I agree, the brands are really responsible too, to inform the customers, but they don't even know themselves sometimes.
True, yeah. Sometimes the research isn't there, it's complicated.
You have like another side too, like, when people switch to a meat eater to a vegetarian to a vegan, the vegan kind of like, growing up these days, why they're doing that? For their health and for environment, both, right? So when you go to the store, buy the foods, you spend 10 minutes more, right? To see that this tomato is ripe enough, or the avocado is good quality. If you can do that, if you're doing that because it is your health, why cannot you spend 10 minutes more in the clothing store, which will be help another one health who made it for you. Like if you spend like 10 more minutes, just go beyond size, color, style, and price. I think if you just ask one more or two more questions that I wanted to know more about this worker, in what circumstances they're been living. Do they have a drinking water? I think that's enough. Does people need to, like, when we are thinking about our health, just think about other people's health as well.
But don't you think this is where the like point of the price comes in? Because we're so used to buying like cheap shirts now that, I don't know, like to spend 3 times the money and buy like a shirt that may have a better environmental record. I don't know if everybody can afford that. Actually, that's my main point. I don't think everybody can afford that.
I think they can. I mean, that's like something I always say. Of course, they just don't have 10 shirts, but they have 3 shirts. So I mean, why don't
I think that's it.
It's kind of like it's not a question of price, because I mean, why do we have to have these massive closets and these massive consumption?
That's
so I mean, of course, I buy 1 shirt and I have it much longer, and I don't buy 10 more, so we can afford it. And then one other thing, which you said of the higher price, actually, and you know it, the higher priced garments are not necessarily the better garments.
That's true.
And
that doesn't help workers.
And it doesn't help the workers, and they're not necessarily environmental friendly either, because they spend a lot of money again on their marketing, and the end consumer pays for the logo, the marketing, the expensive models.
To understand that, we just don't need to even go to the next door. Just go to ask your granny that how many winter coat she had in her teenage. One, or maybe max 2. But who made that one? She paid enough, and she made that sustainable. But now, because of this, this advertisement or the marketing system, the teenagers, they need like 7 coats, and then Sunday they think, oh, I had that last week with my boyfriend, I need a new one. I mean, things doesn't work like that, okay? I mean, things doesn't work like that. We have to think about how big our closet really needed. I mean, I think even 10 years ago or more, I heard that people in the UK, they buy 22 kilos of the clothes in a year.
No way.
Do you really need that many clothes? What exactly you do?
Yeah, that's a shocking.
So it is a time, if we really wanted to save our, blue planet, whatever we have, we already screwed up, but whatever we have, if we still wanted to save it, we need to take care of this. And we need to start with us. And I think those we are sitting in here, we are concerned enough. We are doing what we need to do, and people need to hear what voice is there, that they need to change their habit, they need to ask the question, they need to make responsible these companies who are, screwing up this ecological system.
I would like to go to the question, like in the fields you're working, are you in touch with water? Like, do you care about water issues? For example, your initiative, perhaps you can present it a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my work is, grassroots to global. So, I'm pretty much like getting everywhere. So I educate workers, teaching them how to fight for themselves in the factory and in the community as well. And here it is come the water issue. So respond to that. Water and women these two are so colluded. Like, water issue, my organization main focus is not that, but it comes with whom we work for. Like, women who work 12 or more longer shift in a factory, she need to wake up like 5 in the morning because there will be no drinking water after 7 o'clock. So she need to wake up more, before that, before everyone, be in the queue, getting the water for cooking and showering, for everything. So, water issues comes very easily. Then we teach them that how they can go to their local government and fighting on that. And where are you going to go get the water when you already used it for that garment? Okay, so again, the main focus is not the water, but it is coming with across when we are focusing on the women issues in that area.
Thank you. Lara, how is the position as a designer? Like, how did you come in contact with water issues or women issues?
Not much, actually, because as a designer, I never really think about water as much. I think, especially when I work for bigger companies, that was never something that was talked about in my field. I believe some companies, especially the bigger ones, have a department that does the sourcing, but the designers don't really source, so you don't really know much about it. Now that I do my own brand, I'm a bit more aware of the issue. But here I'm making right now everything in Germany, so I don't think too much about water. I am also dyeing my own yarns here. So there I obviously use water, but I'll try to use as much natural dye as possible. But yeah, it's not something you think about too much in the design industry. Yeah.
Okay, great. And let's go from the design industry to the whole supply chain.
The whole supply chain.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Obviously, there's a whole supply chain. It starts with the raw material, right? When we think about cotton. I mean, the water usage only for cotton is enormous, and then we go to the spinning factory and we have to I make it short, right? I don't dive like super deep into the supply chain. That's like a whole module at university. So, but of course, and then you're knitting or weaving the textiles. Then you have the wet processing. You have all the dyeing and the finishing processes. Denim. Let's not start with denim. I mean, the water usage alone, and then we have, of course, different water levels. We have the, let's say, blue water, which you need to you use clean water for the processing, and then you have the gray water, which is then the wastewater. So basically you have a lot of consumption of water and you have a lot of polluting and pollution of water. So, and then you have garment finishing processes, the cut and sew, not even that much, but if you even go then to the packaging and then the whole trim you use with the garments, it's like you have a whole cycle of polluting water. And if you then go to the consumer, so we have another problem. Maybe you know, with polyester fabrications, you have even the microplastic pollution now. It's also sort of an emission, especially with synthetic fibers, which obviously get used most. It's like 70% or 75% is synthetic fibers nowadays. Much. Yes, it's enormous because it's price sensitive. Let's say not cheap, but price sensitive. But so, and then you have, of course, that's with the consumer level, using garments, washing garments, and then you have the problem with clothing waste ending up on landfills, but not in Germany. It's another country.
It's like
There's a whole other end of the supply chain where we have a problem. At the beginning and at the end, we ship it to Africa, to Asian countries, and then we're very generous here because we think we kind of provide the poor people with our clothing we don't need anymore, but it's a total illusion. It ends up on landfills, close to rivers, close to the ocean, and that's how it ends up there in the water again. So beginning and end, huge problem. So
how big is the discussion in the studies about water?
Well, with us at
I mean,
our
it comes up, but
no, with us in our university, and also my students know me. It's in every model I teach. Water is part of it, obviously, because also I do sometimes workshops in schools and stuff. I always remind everybody that here in Germany, it's luxury, right? We go to our tap and we drink tap water. It's such a luxury we have here, and we have to
shocking for us.
and we have to cherish it, you know. And in other countries, you don't even have running water. You have to think about where to get water, and it's kind of a global problem too. It's not just like, oh, there is no water in here, we have water. We talked earlier about it. If there's no water, there's no life. And if there's no life possible anymore, we have migration. And then people are moving, right? It's kind of like life-sustaining. So yeah, it's a big topic, so in a global context.
And from your experience, do you see that the brands are sensitive with the water they're using? And especially in comparison with the big focus on carbon dioxide?
Well, carbon dioxide is the focus because it's on the political agenda, on the global political agenda. There are all these conferences we talk about CO2 emission and carbon dioxide emission. So this is what everybody's focusing on, and not only in the textile industry, but also in all industries. And I think also the consumer has a sort of sensitivity by now for this topic. It even arrived at the doorstep, let's say. So water, not that much. I know just of some brands, they always offer waterless products, like Levi's, for example. They developed a waterless jeans one time, so they kind of promote it. It's, you know, there's always this question, how far is it marketing and how far do they do it, and how far are they just pushing a product again to get a green, how do you say, like a
green economy?
Yeah, like, no, they look just green, you know, they just look like to the outside they look green, and the consumer thinks, oh, great, we have a great product now. But in general, I think water needs to be addressed much, much more. And it's a global issue. Nobody can think here, oh, it's over there, not my problem, because it will be our problem eventually.
Because of migration, you mean?
Yes, and if we pollute the rest of the planet and there's no water anymore and it's not possible, then people have to leave their countries. And it's totally understandable, and right now we don't see it as a whole, I think. So we don't have this holistic approach yet, but I think, yes, it's a huge topic. I've heard this saying before, water is going to be the new gold. So
it's on the stock market too.
Everybody wants to dig for it, everybody wants to get their hands on it, and
Yeah, I would love to hear a bit of your stories and personal experience of the water pollution that you experienced in Bangladesh. I don't know whether you lived close to a factory or how was your...
No, I mean, the factory was in everywhere when country started getting the business. Now they started moving like outskirts of the city. But when I was in factory, I was living very close to my factory. So I have seen the pollution. And it is not like impacting me, it is impacting like whole community. Even where they are now, it is impacting like all the rivers we have, all the landfill we have, where people used to grow, you know, paddy or many kinds of vegetable or maybe other grains. Those are not there because of this pollution. And in many cases, people need to accept that because of this collusion of, you know, these business people with the politics and with the power, they don't have, you know, voice to raise that, you know, this is not done what you are doing. Like dyeing company, they're throwing the water like you know, it's like, you know, we are just cleaning our dishes in our sink. So in that way, they don't care. You know, whatever the minimum law we have, it is not enforced in those factories. They don't care. And it's not that.
But how can they not care when it's their surrounding and their
because of the collusion.
Yeah.
Because of the power collusion, because of the corruption. And do you think these companies, those are sourcing these goods, they don't know about it? They all know about it. They all totally know that what exactly happening there. I mean, glad that you said about this dumping the clothes. So, we are cutting like in a two-edged sword. Like, they are taking using all our waters, making the clothes, and then sending them back on a name of the charity, using as a dumping area. Yeah. We don't need your clothes. Keep your charity with you. Okay, you made that closet
Say
big.
That to the camera.
Yeah, you made that closet big. Keep it that with you. We don't need your charity. Okay, we do have clothes and we are happy with that. Okay, so things should not be like that way. I'm sorry if I'm harsh, but sometimes somebody need to be harsh because otherwise you're not going to listen. So yeah, I am not impacting directly now. I should say yes, I'm impacting because I don't get running water all the time. I need to wait for water that when that would become, and I'm going to take my shower. And it is all happening because of this garment and textile industry. And it is happening with workers' life even more because the places they're living, they're very close to the factories. And there is no running water, and there is a time when the waters will be coming. I think the city, Dhaka, our capital, is pretty soon it will be out of running water. So out of safe drinking water. So you don't know that what's going to happen that, and many part of the Bangladesh will be happening now because we already use the water for next 150 years. So like few generation waters we already consumed. So we really don't know what's going to happen, and there is no policy from the government. And other way around, we are being one of the country who climately very vulnerable, and we are facing all these cyclones. Our landsliding to the river. We are facing all this. On top of that, we have this industry, one of the biggest.
Just because you quickly said something about you asked how can they not care. I think just because of the level of corruption and the level of collusion that you see in these countries, I feel like the working class or people who actually don't have the power are just trapped in this feeling of powerlessness because they've been stuck with this. That's the reality of no water or polluted water for so many decades that it's just like apathy, like nothing's going to change and this is how we live. And so there's they find it so hard to fight this monster that is just continuing to grow and threaten their existence. And so there's this side of it, but the people also are equally we had a great river when we were young and now it's a drain, and that is our reality. And it's sad.
Yeah,
it's true.
It's actually interesting. Nobody would accept that here.
Yeah.
Right? This is what you tell us, and the companies know about it. Nobody would accept it here, that we have those conditions, and would the companies produce here, they would have really strict rules and regulations in place, not being allowed to even produce like that.
No one wanted to harm their own family.
No, exactly.
That's the problem.
It's the
kill others, make our family safe. That should not be the policy. It should be different.
Out of mind.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
Okay, but then we come also to this question, why is the supply chain still so intransparent? And you said that because they don't know where they got their materials from. They don't know how it's produced, the brands.
Yes, I would say a lot of brands do not know. Because I worked in the industry as well, and we simply sometimes didn't know because we didn't ask. So it's not only the consumers who should ask. Well, let's start with the brands, the design departments, the procurement departments to ask, where does my cotton come from actually? How is the water supply in this country where my cotton comes from? How is the dyeing process? Do you have systems in place to kind of clean the water system? How do you deal with water wastage and stuff like that? Because sometimes I know that companies, they just go to these sourcing trade shows, they buy a nice material because they love it so much, they don't even, it is like that, they don't ask questions. And the worst is if you have only tier 1 supplier doing everything, so you have basically...
You want to explain that?
Yeah, sorry, yes. You basically go to the factory producing your garments, who cut and sew your garments. So you go to them, you give them a package with your design, and you tell them, so this is my shirt I want to produce for that and that price. Make it happen. And that supplier, they source the trim, they source the fabric, they go to their factories again, and they try to match the price. And nobody's gonna ask them, so where did you get actually your material from? Who's your factory? They don't want to tell, because then the brand could go directly to wherever they source. So it's kind of like, and some brands even use agencies. I have to admit, I did that, shame on me, I did that too. So you go to an agency and they source the whole package. So you don't even know where the cut and sew factory is. I mean, you just don't know nothing. So, and that's the intransparency. You can just tell a story about that too, probably. So, and then to tell the customer at the end, if you don't know yourself, that's a big problem. Yeah. So that's the kind
But I also think there's just a lot of pressure coming from a designer perspective to constantly produce more and more. Which is again a problem, because now, like back in the day, each company would do like 2 collections a year, and now a designer launches the collection and then you don't even have time to breathe, because the next day you kind of have to start the next collection again. And every brand now does so many collections. No one needs that. Everyone's stressed now. But it's the demand of the consumer, but the companies, they make the demand. Like they give the consumer this demand kind of. So it's like a circle that is also a problem. And then the time, like working for brands, like time is always running out. You're always you need it quickly done now, and then you lose this sense of or you lose these questions. You don't have time anymore to get these questions answered, and I think that's a huge problem in the industry.
Yeah, the sourcing should completely change, right? The habits of sourcing and purchasing ethics. I mean, that is actually something which really needs to be changed, and then really talking to the factories, talking to the suppliers, really asking questions also on that level.
And also, if you know where you where you were sourcing from, like where the clothes, especially the fabrics or yarns comes from. If it is China, you don't get any information. They don't tell you anything. Yeah. That's also another problem, that you just don't get any information. Kind of like that country where it's a geopolitics. So I think this textile and garment industry is kind of like 60% of dependent on their products. If we don't have fabrics from them or cotton from them, we're not going to do anything.
Well, we noticed that during the pandemic, right? I mean, there were when there was the lockdown in China, which was happening first. It was so obvious suddenly, because factories in Bangladesh, Vietnam, Cambodia, and anywhere, they couldn't produce anymore because they were short of material from China. Yeah. Because it all comes together. And really, those supply chains are so intricate and so complex. And if there's just one button missing, you can't continue.
True.
Yeah. So you better produce in Amsterdam,
Germany. Everything.
But you said you would like to produce in Bangladesh.
Yeah, I do believe that it's not a solution to take the work away from these countries and try to do everything here. Then there's no work then there would be everyone would be out of work. It's more that we change how it's done there, and then because also the people there are way better in making it than people here mostly. It is so I'd love to produce, but right now it's the minimum quantities are I can't. It's difficult. Also the shipping. There's a lot of problems when you're a small brand sourcing.
Come and talk to us.
Yeah.
No, I mean that also reminds me that when you raise the issue that in the 80s, when the public eye was boycotting Shell, I'm against boycotting.
Yeah.
Yeah, very clearly, because we need these jobs. It is 4 million workers are working just only in Bangladesh. Just think about India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, in Central America, or in the Eastern Europe, or Middle East. All workers need these jobs, but we want them with dignity. So we need to hammer that dignity part and make sure that brands and those factory owners realize that, and we have our dignity, and that definitely includes a living wage, includes a great housing with water supplies and everything, includes freedom of association, includes gender-based violence-free workplace, includes a safety that we don't want it to die like a factory, like Rana Plaza, and of course social protection. Okay, that is needed. So we need to remember all those when we do. So I'm not in a favor of boycotting.
Not even if there's a demand connected to it?
No
So
one
like H&M, we boycott you because we want you to pay more to your workers. And that puts pressure on it?
H&M one of the biggest supplier from Bangladesh.
Yeah,
so
that's why I'm saying it.
It's 400 factories, and we don't have privilege to do that at this moment, but we definitely can pressure to them by the consumers, because the purchasing powers with the consumers, giving a deadline to them that if you don't do that, then we are coming after you. I think that is enough for these brands, because they knows that one day, if they cannot sell one day, how much money they're going to bleed. So they really know that. So if consumers really raise their voice, that will make difference.
Okay. But you think it's better to go down the legal route and threaten them, saying like, we will, as a union or as an organization or as somebody else, sue you? That's a separate thing. Thanks for Aditi, raising that.
I think to bringing this, I think leash would be very harsh word, but to bringing these brands under accountability, we should have this human rights due diligence directive kind of law in the sourcing country, like European Union. They should have this law and make these companies to regulate under that law, and wherever it goes, that law will be follow them. I think that will be giving us access to remedy. We can come back to their native country and sue them, and that will make difference too. So I know European Union working on it, and I don't know that how much Drip and Drip putting their effort on this law. I think you should, because the water also a big issue in that. The company making pollution in down to the supply chain, I think it's a big issue in that law as well. So if we can work together and getting that law, I think suing the company, that's a great idea. That's a future. That's a future.
Yeah. I would love to hear a bit about your experience while making the film at the Noyar River. Yeah.
Yeah, just specifically to do with the water, or like what I saw?
Yeah, for example, what should people know about this situation, and whether people not wanting you to film somewhere and...
Yeah, it was hard to get permissions, but okay, so just for some context, I basically went down to a river in South India that used to be a really beautiful river, and now that's the area in South India where the textile cluster is, so dyeing units and manufacturing units, and I think it's the biggest cluster that exports textiles out of India. And they obviously export to middlemen who then export to these bigger brands, like American and European brands. And it's really interesting because you can see basically how this industry has completely ruined the river, basically. You see in parts of the river, you see basically it's frothing and there's bubbles in the air, and I'm smiling, but actually it was really, really horrible to see. And then you see animals drinking the water, you see people bathing, showering, brushing their teeth in this water, because it is their main supply of water, right? They've grown up there, they're farmers, this is the water they use to irrigate their fields. And for me, actually, I went there expecting, of course, I went there expecting pollution. I didn't expect that much pollution, because this is a river that they have actually tried to clean up for many years, and still this is the state of the river. That I hadn't expected the level of pollution to be as high as it was in terms of its impact on the people there. And so I met these farmers who are in the film. who used to be subsistence farmers. So they grew their own crops, they sold whatever was like extra, and they made their profits from that. But now almost nothing grows there. Like 1/3 of their crops don't grow just because the water that comes to them is so polluted. And so they've changed their business and they import coconuts from a different state. So already that's like carbon heavy, because now they have to like somebody else is growing the coconuts, some other state. They transport it to this state, and then they hire workers to break the coconuts and sell it to like the Western coconut oil demand, you know? Yeah.
I think I watched this is out already, right?
Yeah.
Then I'm pretty sure I watched that.
Ah, yeah.
With the farmers with the coconut.
I
watched that.
Good.
Yeah.
I hope you subscribe. But so it was just so interesting to see, like, you think of pollution as like toxic chemicals or like not having access to drinking water or basic sanitation and stuff. But to think that this guy was telling me like his son, what he really wants for his children is to continue doing what they've done, because they really do want to live there and farm, it's their land, you know. But he can't, because there is no way to continue farming in this land. And yeah, so it was just really like, you see like just like time has been so expansive, and then you see like one blip where like an industry has come and they found like their roots in this one place, but then nothing can continue after this as it had continued. And yeah, that was really like quite tragic to see. But yeah, you also like, it was difficult to actually see the pollution or see the river being polluted, because a lot of this, there is a law that governs that says the water has to be clean, of course. So a lot of like these fly-by-night operators will like dump their stuff there in the night, and they always change their place. So obviously I only had like 3 days of filming, and I really wanted to go there and see this happening, but it was really hard because you don't know where, and it's always like, how they do it is they build a shed in a new part of the river, and then they bring their trucks in, and then they like hide it behind the shed, so you can't obviously see it because like, yeah, and then they like release it into the water, so it's like
so they know they're doing something wrong.
Of course, yeah, of course. But yeah, it's more complicated than that, because of course they're polluting the river, and what they're actually supposed to do is send their effluents to like a water treatment plant that is mandated now by the court. And so a lot of people do that, but it's expensive. So it's obviously way cheaper to just like drive a little bit, dump your stuff in the river, and then find another place the other night so that the police don't like catch on to you. But people of like locally know that this is happening, of course. But yeah, like it's really difficult also, because these guys, like the dyeing units and the production units, often also like really small. Like they don't have like the funding to actually then invest in a sewage treatment plant or pay the fee to use a common sewage treatment plant, and so like this cuts into their cost, right? So they also want to, of course, cut costs and do what's cheap, and this is the cheapest way to do it. So yeah, it's also, I mean, yeah, I guess it's unfair because they don't have the support from the brands who buy from them. So yeah.
Thank you. What's in your opinion the most effective strategy for raising awareness on a topic like that? Coming from the media.
Question. Yeah, I think like I think investigative reports are actually really strong. You saw my face, so obviously it does like if you tell the story well and if you tell like a new angle, it does get traction. And I think that's a really good way, where if you as a reporter tell like an authentic story of what's actually happening on ground. But also I think what you said earlier, like people don't also want to or maybe I said it, don't have the time to engage with these topics, so that's really difficult. So I think it has to also, of course, come from a brand perspective. But yeah, just awareness. I think NGOs like yours are also really important to raise awareness on the issue.
Do you, like, from your whole work at Deutsche Welle, like, how often is water a topic?
We always try to find a new angle, because it has been covered a lot, and we try to do a little bit of deeper investigation, because it is a topic that's talked about a lot, and we want to kind of highlight these things that aren't so common, to kind of have a larger narrative around this. So yeah, we try to talk about it fairly often.
And Kalpona, I would like to hear some stories of you, like when your experience work in a factory, and from this time, do you see a fundamental change happening in the field of human and especially women rights?
Yeah, I mean, like my time in the factory, it was long shifting hour. verbal, physical, sometimes sexual abuse was very common. And yeah, longest month I can remember that 23 days ago I left home and I had to work like 23 days in a row in the factory.
Wow.
I like sleep. Yeah, I was like sleeping like 2-3 hours in the production floor and then get back to the work. So that was the life. Definitely it's not same. And I would be making, working 400 hours, over 400 hours in a month and making only $6. So
When was that?
it was like 90s. So during that time, like 30 years, precisely 30 years back. But, in compared to that, the women rights has been improved, like more women can speak now. They knows the law, the ability of the organization, like educating organization has been increased. That can be NGOs or that can be union, federation. They're educating workers, not the government and manufacturers, of course. But some areas like wages, though it is 8,000, but compared to my wage, it is like poverty wages. I would say, as cost of living is so high, and it is prime minister to a factory worker or rickshaw puller, everyone paying same for their foods, and it's not okay. And area of freedom of expression is not improved. Like I got fired and blacklisted because I raised my voice in the factory and organized my co-workers to join with union and bargain. And even workers even today, when they organize, they face them. They're being threatened, beaten, falsely charged, and it's happening because in our parliament we have 40% or more than 40% of the member who own directly group of garment factories. So my legislator is my factory owner, and they can do anything they want. But safety, yeah, there is improvement, but not like that government has taken a great initiative. That's why it has happened. Like when I was in the factory, my factory got fired, and we have been locked up in a shop, in a third floor, production floor. After 3 hours of crying and screaming, they opened the door. But when we was getting out, many of my co-workers has been stampeded. Luckily, no one died, and it's all happened because the doors was locked, and there was only one stair, and half of that was blocked by merchandise. That has been changed. Even the situation from Rana Plaza, we all know that 1,132 workers has been died, killed basically in a preventable accident. That situation is not there anymore because a code on Bangladesh fire and building safety, which is an international accord now, has made a phenomenal change in the ground. But still, we are dealing with the gender-based violence issues. We are dealing with the, no social protection, no economic protection for workers. Like during COVID, when people was, it was practical for everyone, and people was like closing their door because they wanted to be safe. But our workers was protesting in the street with thousands because they need their wages, because they cannot disturb with their small children. But among 4 million, at least 300,000 lost their jobs, and they have no protection at all. And they went ground zero and starving with their small children. So yes, there is a changes, but these are the bold areas have not changed at all. What changes come, like when industry was rushed to the Bangladesh, the country wasn't ready. Those has been situated in a sharing building or residential building. But now there are many, like 80% or more factories are purposefully made, but it still is a question that those are fire safety or building. They build it as a following building code or not. Those can be a question, but many of them shifted in a purposefully made building. So. Those has been changed. The country is proud to say that out of 10 green garment factories, 7 of them are in Bangladesh. But when workers are not getting living wage, I don't know what does mean by that green. And when people other part of the world talking about this carbon free or green economy, I don't see workers' stake on that. So that's really make me crazy. How do you talk about green economy without putting workers' life on it? So yeah, there is a changes and there is no changes too.
And there's one question about a quote of the Bangladeshi Nobel Prize winner, Muhammad Yunus. And he argues that the work in this industry, although hard paid and underpaid, is also a fantastic contribution to the liberation of women, because it gives them a chance to rise from absolute poverty. Do you agree with him?
In his eye, I don't know. I mean, in what sense he said that? It's an illusion that you may used many times. A woman working hard in the factory, and when she gets money, she needs to hand over to other person, like to her husband or someone in the family. Then how she is economical freedom? I need to know that. If she don't have power to spend her own money, so then it's the biggest question. But it's not like for everyone, but rare cannot be example. So I disagree with him also, because he also owned garment and he didn't treat the workers well. So that's a good question too. That, I mean, how do you give this kind of quote when you are not treating workers in your own factory, and your worker brought you to the court to settle these things? So I don't agree with him.
Thank you. I would like to hear from you guys to know a little bit more about the challenges when you want to orientate yourself more into sustainability. Perhaps you could highlight some of them.
Yeah, I mean, for me as a startup now, I think the biggest challenge obviously is money. So that's a big part, but also what I said earlier, the pressure of society a bit, and the pressure of the demand, because even though like the world is more aware of this problem in the textile industry, at the same time, we live in a world where we're killing the planet for sheen fits, so it's kind of for me it's the biggest problem is money and resources, like finding out what's the best, because it's hard to get the exact information, and also knowing what we can trust. It's like when the other day I went home and a family member came to me and was like, "Oh, I bought this at H&M. It's organic." So then they think they did something well for the environment, and then it's like, but if you get the full information on how it's actually made, then you realize, it's an illusion, or it's all fake. So I think for me, it's definitely getting the right information, getting support also, because I am trying to build production in a sustainable way, but so far, also from the government, I didn't get any support yet, because also, do we really need another fashion brand, out there? But I'm trying to the best of my ability with not really getting education in that subject to try to do better. But yeah, I think the money part is a big challenge, and the education. Yeah, I would say.
And from your perspective?
Well, I think it was more considering the brands, right? What they are, the fashion brands, what they should do. I think startups do have one chance, or smaller designers, because they can start new.
Yeah.
So basically you can do better and find ways when you also grow to do better. For the bigger brands, I think it's a big machinery. So I always say, actually we should put everything on hold and start all over again. Because right now what happens is, well, we fix here a little bit, and then we fix here a little bit, and then we fix at another spot a little bit, and nobody fixes the whole picture. It's every brand just kind of fixes some screw at the machinery, if we compare it to that. Just do some little part. Well, here is a company and we use organic cotton. So this is our big thing. So, and then there's one thing I really don't like. Now the companies jump all on recycled polyester.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, first of all, polyester is not environmental friendly, but now recycled polyester is the big solution. And then another company, they show artisans they work with, and so on and so on. Besides the social aspect, very little companies show. So there are some companies, they address the social aspect, ethical and fair production, and the water aspect, well, to come back to water, is also something, maybe with organic cotton, we see it here and there, being noticed and also marketed. But generally, I think the companies just have to reconsider their whole supply chains, talk to their suppliers, talk to the NGOs, talk to everybody out there, because they don't communicate sometimes that well. Because here's the problem, the brands sometimes don't even know the issues if they don't ask. So communication, and then, well, there's always this thing with punishment. If we have laws and regulations and you can sue companies, then I don't believe in punishment, I believe more in incentives. So, but even that would be something really good, to give incentives to companies to do better. Because there's one issue companies always say, if we work sustainable, if we pay fair wages, we are not competitive anymore. And this is something, even in the government you hear that, even with the due diligence law, there were politicians out there of certain parties saying, well, we can do that to our economy, and then there is no competitiveness among the companies anymore. And this shouldn't be an issue. So, and rethinking the business models on top of it, you know, when do we have enough growth? So do we have to pay more to our stakeholders, and does a company really have to grow that much more, you know, or produce that much more product to get there? There's a whole value system actually which needs to be questioned. It's not a simple solution. And on the other hand, if a company really would do something about paying fair wages, being more environmental friendly, raising the product pricing, obviously, not pushing the prices, then we have to inform the customer, hey, you know, you can't buy 10 shirts, you can only buy 2, but be happy with it. So now we have a whole value system we have to change there as well, because in the society we live here, it's basically the more you have, the better. We come to this kind of minimalistic thinking right now, but it's not really there yet. So it's kind of, you know, and it's not necessarily about these issues. We address them with that kind of way we look at things.
I also see that definitely, like in the West, there's a tendency to kind of be more minimalistic. But I feel like in South Asia and maybe also Africa, like just because the Western world has been like 30 or 40 years ahead in, of course, like with energy and with consumerism, like now there's such a big rising culture of consumerism in South Asia, and then it's a question of like inequality as well, right? Like historical injustice. And I completely agree that I think consumerism is the biggest kind of driver of all of these things. But I don't know, I just find like when we talk about like the value change and stuff, it just seems so big. Unattainable. And I don't know if you guys are more optimistic about it. And just, I don't know, it just seems like it's such a big I wonder if there's not like more practical solutions, or I don't know, it's like a philosophical question I'm asking here, but it just seems like like to flip the world upside down is kind of what you're saying, right? And
it's kind of interesting, right? When the pandemic arrived, there were a lot of trend forecasters and also a lot of people saying, wow, you know, this might be the chance for change, right? Maybe people don't need that much anymore. Maybe values are changing. Well, hope for the production countries, but nothing like that happened, right? It was the opposite, actually, right? Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah,
but I wonder if actually these smaller changes within the system are the way to do it. But
but it just takes longer, right?
Yeah.
And I would like to wrap up with a question for you, Kalpona, because you mentioned before Bangladesh water situation? Dhaka will suffer water.
Yeah, I mean it will
run out of water.
Run out of, you know, running water, not even drinking, running water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my question is, what do you think will happen to Bangladesh and the communities if nothing changes in terms of the water exploitation?
We have to make changes. Okay, I'm an optimistic person.
Nothing changes.
if it is nothing changes, I know nothing, you know, nothing changes because there is no good policy, nothing changes because there is no political will. But if we know that, you know, I'm dying, I will try to be, you know, do whatever it takes to live, okay? So, or alive. So I think it is people's need to raise their voices. People, those are impacted. It is not only that factory workers impacted. So it is not only me, not only the factory worker, it's a whole community, you know, impacting. And they're not saying anything because they think that we have to go with it, but it's not. Soon as these people would know there is a law supposed to, you know, these you know, factories supposed to not throw their wastewater into the field. If they know that education, if they can fight for that, I think then change will become. So if nothing changes, then it is the end. And I don't want it to see any the end. I'm an activist. I wanted to fight.
Great. I think that's a good word for the end. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.